It is not a peaceful time in Iran. There have been protests for nearly 2 weeks that Iranian security forces have tried to stop. What you're hearing there, some women being taken into custody. It was posted on Twitter by Iran International English, a 24-hour Persian news channel. A lot of protesters across the country are posting videos on social media of crackdowns that have reportedly left at least 30 people dead. It all started September 16th when Mahsa Amini died in police custody, allegedly beaten severely for not properly wearing a head covering.
Mahsa is the girl who got killed just because of a bit of her hair was visible.
Masih Alinejad is an Iranian journalist who tells Fox,
Iranian women are like us. They deserve to have the same freedom and dignity. So that is why Mahsa's brutal death becoming a turning point for Iranian women and a tipping point for the Islamic Republic.
The U.S. is siding with the protesters. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday.
We have taken tangible steps to sanction the morality police who caused this young woman's death. And we've taken steps to make it easier for the Iranian people to get access to the internet and to communicate with one another and with the world. And we will keep speaking out day in and day out because this is a matter of fundamental justice, dignity, and rights.
Also supporting the protesters, Congresswoman Young Kim.
What we're seeing is the Iranian people standing up and speaking out against that cruel Ayatollah regime.
She's a Republican from California.
They're burning their hijabs, cutting off their hair, and demanding freedom, something that we haven't seen because of the violent oppression that Ayatollah regime is now cracking down on their people in Iran is really on full display. They're cracking down on their freedom of speech and of dissent, with, at this point, the toll of number of people dying is just increasing every day. So this is really heartbreaking. And as a country, U.S. must demonstrate through our words and our actions that we stand with the Iranian people in the fight for freedom, which is why I just got off the House floor giving my, brief remarks to let the Iranian people know that the United States and I and many of my colleagues stand with them in their peaceful protest for their freedom.
It's also interesting to note that throughout the crackdown, the attempts to stop the protests, they're still posting videos on social media of the violence and the crackdown, and people are even ripping down posters of the Ayatollah, shouting death to the dictator. It seems like a lot of younger Iranians have become more bold these days.
Younger Iranians who are more savvy using internet, I think the ability for them to get the message out is what we are seeing in the world. So to that end, I want to thank Elon Musk for deploying Starlink to ensure internet access so the world can see what's happening on the ground as the regime cracks down. And we must keep current sanctions in place to ensure that we do not offer any concessions to this regime as we continue to fight this. But again, the young Iranians, the ability for them to take photos, post it on internet for the world to see what's going on, I think this is really, really important time.
One of the things Iran always does is cut off internet access, shut it down. But if you have the Starlink and you have the satellite access, they don't really have as much of an ability to do that anymore.
Exactly. I let my colleagues in sending a letter to our president and our administration so that our government does not issue the entry visa to President Raisi, because, we know what he's doing, what his regime is doing. And we know President Raisi is a monster. He has no place on United States soil because I didn't want him to come to the United States, give him a platform by participating at the United Nations General Assembly just to further promote his propaganda and promote terrorism on U.S. soil. We allowed it. We turned a blind eye by allowing him to come here. And that's a travesty. And I've been speaking out against this. As we saw, this was another way for Raisi to spread his support for terrorism, and Iranian regime is supporting, like terrorist groups like Hezbollah and Hamas.
It's also interesting the Iranians have helped supply Russia with drones to use in the war in Ukraine.
We know Iran supports all of these, and we allow them to do this, and we are allowing him to further promote that, which is why I think our words, America's words, must be trusted by allies and feared by our adversaries. Supporting our vulnerable allies is critical to keeping Americans safe at home and abroad. But what we've seen, the crisis after crisis from this Biden administration is not only making the life harder for Americans, but also hurting our global standing. And Putin and Xi Jinping, they watched our botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, and this is what's happening. So we are providing the ability for Russia, for our adversaries, to continue to undermine our ability to lead in the world.
These protests and U.S. sanctions come as the Biden administration negotiates with Iran, trying to rejoin the Iran International Nuclear Agreement President Trump pulled the U.S. out of in 2018, calling it a horrible deal. Our allies still signed on to it, have brokered the talks for months, despite Iran's violations in recent years, increasing uranium enrichment closer to weapons grade. At the UN General Assembly earlier this month, President Biden said,
"While the United States is prepared for a mutual return to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action if Iran steps up to its obligations, the United States is clear. We will not allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon."
The other day, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the talks have gone backwards. Congresswoman Kim is worried about a new deal.
It's definitely going to be worse than what we had in 2015 in JCPOA. That was negotiated during the Obama administration without the advice and consent of the Senate. That was flawed, and that was taken advantage of by Iran. Under the original Iran deal, Revolutionary Guard forces continue to coordinate and plan attacks on our service members and our ally partners. That further contributed to a deteriorating stability in the region. That's what we're seeing right now. If we go ahead and agree to the new agreement as Iran wants it, then we're giving concessions, and it will embolden Iran to further expand their nuclear weapons ambition, which is why Congress needs to be consulted in every step of the way as Biden administration negotiates this new deal. We cannot sign off on anything until Congress is fully informed as to what exactly is going to be included in that Iran deal.
When Congresswoman Young Kim was first elected in 2020, she and two other new House members, Michelle Park Steele and Marilyn Strickland, were the first Korean-American women in Congress. So she's closely monitoring North Korea's nuclear threat as well. And today, Vice President Harris visits South Korea. The day after, in Japan, going to a U.S. Navy base speaking out against China.
China used Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan as a pretext for an unprecedented show of military force.
The same day the vice president said that, China's ally North Korea fired off 2 more missiles and is on pace for a record number of those tests this year. Congresswoman Kim says,
right now, we know North Korea is a nuclear state. We have to recognize North Korea for what it is and deal with North Korea for who they are, not what we want North Korea to be. We need to show strength. Our words matter, which is why we want to make sure that when we lead from the position of strength, that we mean what we say. And so we want to make sure that allies can trust us. And we want one of the strongest security as well as economic and trade partner that South Korea is. We want them to know that we will be there as a strong ally in all areas from economic, trade, and security front. So I am watching the developments in the Korean Peninsula as well. And I think I'm so glad that you mentioned that there are not one, but there are 4 of us, Korean Americans serving in the United States Congress, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. We bring the very bipartisan voice when it comes to dealing with North Korea. And we do not want any conflict on the Korean Peninsula, but we need to make sure that we show the strength that we can be there to support our allies if and when the conflict arises. But it's not just the Korean Peninsula. As Xi Jinping eyes Taiwan, we want Taiwan people to know that the United States will be there to protect them as well. And that includes providing them with the arms that Taiwan already paid for and the United States has yet to deliver, which is why I introduced that Export Arms Delivery Act, and I'm glad that was passed. We need to make sure that we provide them with what they purchased, and we promise new weapons sale to Taiwan is important, but again, we need to provide them with what they already purchased. And same thing, I'm glad with the South Korea, they are also they're one of the countries that do a lot more foreign arms sales, or, we've been able to provide them. We'll continue to be there and provide them with the weapons that they need.
Congresswoman, President Biden the other day said that the U.S. military would come to the defense of Taiwan if China were to invade. Is that the right policy, in your view?
It is the right policy, and I hope that would be the strategic clarity. But, this is, I believe, the fourth time now that President Biden has signaled support for Taiwan, and then his administration and the staff backtracks. It does nothing to signal confidence to our friends, and I'm sure it's caught the attention of Xi Jinping as he eyes Taiwan. What's even more alarming is that Taiwan has purchased billions of dollars worth of American military equipment to defend themselves. As I mentioned, they already pay for it. United States has yet to deliver them. We need to make sure that the Taiwan Relations Act, which is like 40 years old now, we need to revisit it and make sure that strategic ambiguity, where that is the current policy of the United States, it's about time that we revisit and talk about strategic clarity.
Congresswoman Young Kim, Republican from California, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.